friend, the senior senator from Texas, and I am honored to stand here with the senior senator from Texas and the senators from Arizona as we speak out together against the humanitarian crisis that is unfolding on our border. President Obama today is down in the state of Texas, but sadly he's not visiting the border. He's not visiting the children who are suffering as the failures of the Obama policies. Instead, he's doing fundraisers. He's visiting Democratic fat cats to collect checks, and apparently there's no time to look at the disaster, at the devastation that's being caused by his policies. Just a couple of weeks ago, as the senior senator from Texas observed, I was down in Lackland Air Force Base, where there are roughly 1,200 children being housed. And there's one thing President Obama has said about what's happening that is absolutely correct. This is a humanitarian disaster. But it is a disaster of the president's own making. It is a disaster that is the direct consequence of President Obama's lawlessness. A quick review of the facts makes that abundantly apparent. In 2011, just 3 years ago, there were roughly 6,000 unaccompanied children apprehended trying to cross illegally into this country. Then in 2012, in the summer of 2012, right before the election, President Obama illegally granted amnesty to some 800,000 people who were here illegally who had entered the country as children. The direct, predictable, foreseeable consequence of granting that amnesty is the number of children, unaccompanied children, immediately began to skyrocket. This year, the estimates are that 90,000 unaccompanied children will enter this country illegally. That's up from 6,000 just 3 years ago, 6,000 to 90,000. Next year, the estimate is 145,000. And this explosion is the direct consequence of the president's lawlessness, and it's worth underscoring. The people who are being hurt the most are these kids. The coyotes who are bringing them in, these are not well-meaning social workers trying to help out some kids. These are violent, hardened, transnational criminal cartels. And these mothers and fathers, sadly, are handing over their children to violent criminals who are physically abusing, who are sexually abusing small children. You know, when I was down at Lackland Air Force Base, a senior official there described to me how these cartels with some of these children, after they've taken them, after they've begun coming to this country to take them here illegally, that they would hold these children captive, hold them hostage, to extract additional money from the families. And if the families didn't send them additional money, as horrifying as it is, these drug cartels would begin severing body parts of these children. And I listened to this senior official at Lackland describe how the cartels will put a gun to the back of the head of a little boy or little girl and force that child to cut off the fingers or the ears of another little boy or little girl. And if they don't do so, they'll shoot them and move to the next one. And so on our end, we are having children come to this country that we're having to deal with who are, number one, some of them are maimed. They've been maimed by the brutality of these criminal cartels. Others of them have deep, deep psychological trauma of a child forced to do something so horrific. This is a tragedy that is playing out, and it's playing out in real time. Now, the administration has suggested the cause of this is violence in Central America. And I would suggest to my friend, the senior senator from Texas, to the senators from Arizona, that that argument is a complete red herring. Violence in one country, you would expect to see the number of immigrants from that country to go up, but there's no reason unaccompanied children would go up. That is something unique and distinct. There have always been countries across the world, sadly, that have been plagued by violence, and when that happens, we have always seen an influx in immigrants, both legal and illegal, from those countries. What we're seeing here is particular, though. It is particularized towards children. And the reason it is particularized towards children is because the president granted amnesty in a way that was particularized towards children. And if you want to understand just how false the administration's talking point is for the cause of what's happening, you need look no further than a report that was prepared by our border security that Senator Cornyn and Senator Flake and I all saw in the Senate Judiciary Committee. A couple of weeks ago, we had a hearing on this humanitarian crisis. And a whistleblower at the Border Patrol handed over this confidential document to a number of senators on the Judiciary Committee. It described how the Border Patrol interviewed over 200 people who had come here illegally, adults and children, and asked them a simple question: why did you come? 95% said, we came because we believe if we get here, we'll get amnesty. We believe we will get a permiso, is what they said. That once we get here, once a child gets here, that little boy, that little girl is scot-free. And I would suggest to my friends, this is what amnesty looks like. Amnesty looks like dangerous drug cartels entering this country wantonly. Amnesty looks like thousands of young children being housed in military bases. Amnesty looks like hundreds of immigrants who came here being transported into cities and towns amid oppositions from the citizens who live there. Amnesty looks like a complete and utter disregard of our rule of law. Amnesty is unfolding before our very eyes, and I would suggest the only response that will stop this humanitarian disaster is for President Obama to start enforcing the law, to stop promising amnesty, to stop refusing to enforce federal immigration law, and finally to secure the borders. And indeed, I would call upon our colleagues in this body, in both parties, to come together and secure the border once and for all, and to stop holding border security hostage for amnesty.
Senator, if I can ask a question.